The house stood like a ghost, its windows dark, its walls bowed with time. A whisper of laughter once echoed through these halls, the kind that could lift a nation. Now, only silence remains. Somewhere in the woods near Clark Lake, Michigan, there was a cottage that once belonged to television royalty. It didn't boast the marble staircases or manicured grounds of Hollywood mansions, but it held something rarer: retreat, privacy, and maybe even peace. For a woman known to millions as the indomitable Granny Clampett, Irene Ryan's final years remain as enigmatic as they are heartbreaking. The world adored her twangy reprimands, her moonshine wisdom, her twinkling eyes that made the Beverly Hillbillies one of the most beloved shows of its era. But behind that apron and behind the cameras, Irene was nursing wounds far deeper than anyone guessed. She had no children, no husband, no heirs, just a legacy that would outlive her, and a small lakeside escape that would, for years, slowly rot into the soil from which it once rose. This is the story of Irene Ryan's abandoned estate and her tragic decline. It's a tale of bright lights and dark silences, applause and echo, triumph and surrender. A woman who made America laugh while quietly fading out of the spotlight. Alone. Let's step inside. Chapter 1. The Ascent of Granny. She was born Jessie Irene Noblet on October 17, 1902 in El Paso, Texas, a desert town still finding its footing in the new century. Her mother was Norwegian, her father a native Texan, and their lives were far removed from any imagined glamour. But young Irene had something in her blood, some spark, some echo of performance that wouldn't stay quiet. By the age of 11, she was already on the stage, competing in an amateur contest in San Francisco, belting out "Pretty Baby" to a room full of strangers, and winning. That voice, cheeky and bold, became her calling card. She wasn't classically beautiful, but she was unforgettable. Audiences remembered the timing, the cadence, the eyes that said she saw the joke before you did. Her big break came in the 1920s, alongside her first husband, Tim Ryan. Together they formed a vaudeville duo, Tim and Irene. She was the wacky foil to his straight man, and their chemistry was magnetic. Audiences packed in to watch their fast-paced patter, slapstick routines, and that ever-present spark of comic tension. Even after their marriage ended, they kept working together, proving that the stage often outlasts the heart. Through the 30s and 40s, Irene was a staple on radio, quick with a quip, a master of character voices, and always, always funny. But film offered only bit parts: nosy neighbors, spinsters, the quirky woman in the corner. Hollywood didn't know what to do with a woman like Irene Ryan. She was too sharp to play dumb and too real to be glamorized. And then, in 1962, the world changed. The Beverly Hillbillies premiered on CBS, and in one night, Irene Ryan became a household name. As Daisy Mae Granny Moses, the scrappy, foul-tempered matriarch from the Ozarks, she stole every scene. She wasn't just comic relief, she was the backbone. Audiences howled at her hollers, her moonshine still, her righteous fury at Beverly Hills' pretentiousness. Granny wasn't just funny. She was oddly powerful. What the public didn't see was how hard Irene worked to get it right. She poured her life into that role. She transformed her voice, her posture, her entire being into Granny. And in doing so, she erased every doubt Hollywood ever had about her. She earned 2 Emmy nominations. She toured the country. She was adored by children and adults alike. But with all the applause came something else: a quiet, growing loneliness. By the time she reached her greatest fame, Irene was already in her 60s. The husbands were long gone. The children never came. She had friends, yes, colleagues, admirers. But in the quiet corners of her life, there were no giggles, no footsteps, no one to carry her name when the curtains closed. And so, sometime during this dazzling second act, Irene Ryan purchased a cottage far away from the lights, a small estate on the shores of Clark Lake, Michigan. Simple, unfussy, a place to sit with the quiet, a place where, for once, she could just be Jessie Irene Noblet again. But even that refuge, like the actress herself, would one day fall into silence. Chapter 2. The estate, that time forgot. The road to Clark Lake was long, lined with pine and memory. A two-lane stretch of Americana that curved gently around Michigan's inland lakes and scattered farmhouses. It wasn't Hollywood, it wasn't Bel Air or Brentwood. That was the point. Tucked away among the trees, Irene Ryan's cottage wasn't opulent. It was modest, like her beginnings. There were whispers of a rustic elegance, wooden beams darkened by time, a stone fireplace that had seen many winters, perhaps even a piano tucked into the corner for old vaudeville melodies that no one else would ever hear. The neighbors remembered her only vaguely, a quiet woman who sometimes appeared in the summer months, polite but private, always alone. It wasn't the kind of estate that made magazine spreads or tour guides, but to Irene, it was sanctuary, a place where no one expected Granny's high-pitched scolding or her comic grimaces. Here she could rest her face. Here the applause didn't chase her. Over time, legends grew around the house. Some said it was worth millions. Others claimed it had been left to rot decades before her death. The truth was more understated. It was simply abandoned, not sensationally, but gradually, forgotten like so many summer homes when the season ends. The lights were never replaced. The shingles began to curl. The laughter that once warmed its rooms became nothing but a memory trapped in the wood. But what made it eerie, what still stirs rumors on local blogs and haunted Facebook pages, was the sense of abandonment. Not just the neglect of a building, but the emotional vacancy it represented. For all her fame, Irene Ryan died alone. No funeral procession of heirs. No children to sort through her keepsakes or keep the cottage humming with life. When the end came, it came quickly and left everything in pause. Some reports claim the estate was demolished sometime in the 1950s, though that would have predated her death. Others suggest that she simply stopped visiting it and that nature slowly reclaimed the land. What's more believable is this. After a lifetime of giving the world her voice, Irene retreated to a quiet she never quite escaped. In Hollywood, when the lights dim, someone always rushes in to relight them. But here, in the soft-spoken heart of Michigan, when Irene Ryan left, no one came. The estate sat, solemn and unbothered, as if mourning her in its own silent way. It wasn't grand. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. And in its quiet disrepair, it told the story of a woman who once made millions laugh, and yet found her only real peace among the shadows. Chapter 3. Tragic Decline. By the early 1970s, Irene Ryan was a woman both celebrated and quietly exhausted. She had ridden the whirlwind of television fame into her golden years, and though the Beverly Hillbillies had ended in 1971 after a 9-season run, the applause still echoed. But applause doesn't last forever, and neither does the body that earns it. She wasn't one to sit still. At 69, Irene took to the Broadway stage, a dream deferred, now suddenly real. In 1972, she won a role in the original production of Pippin, a bold, brash musical filled with color and chaos. She played Bertha, the eccentric grandmother who delivers a rousing anthem to living life to the fullest, no time at all. And each night, as she belted out that number with defiant joy, audiences rose to their feet. No one knew she was dying. Sometime during the show's run, Irene suffered a stroke on stage. She collapsed, not in a dressing room, not at home, but in front of an audience, the one place where she had always felt safe. There were whispers of fatigue, of illness, but the truth was crueler. She had been diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, glioblastoma, a death sentence hidden behind grease paint and curtain calls. She left the production and flew home to California. In just a matter of weeks, her body began to fail. Heart disease compounded her diagnosis. Her frame, once so lively, so wiry and full of mischief, weakened rapidly. And on April 26, 1973, Irene Ryan passed away in Santa Monica. She was 70 years old. There was no grand Hollywood send-off, no sweeping tributes on network television. Just a quiet announcement, a few heartfelt obituaries, and a silence that descended like a final curtain. Her will made no mention of heirs. Her estate, reportedly worth just under $1 million, not extravagant by celebrity standards, was mostly channeled into a gift far greater than any possession. The house in Clark Lake remained untouched. Whether it was already in decline or simply left to time, its fate mirrored Irene's own, once vibrant, now hushed. Nature had begun to pull it back into the earth, vines creeping up the siding, wind brushing against empty window panes. Visitors claimed to feel something there, an energy, a sadness, a presence not quite ready to let go. And in many ways it was true. Irene Ryan gave everything to the audience, every look, every line, every laugh. She made the world smile while shouldering her own sorrow in silence. In her final days, there were no cameras, no scripts, just stillness, and behind it, an ache that not even laughter could erase. Chapter 4. Legacy and Echoes. When a performer dies, the lights dim. The applause fades. The scripts are shelved, but some leave behind a final act, unwritten, unseen, but enduring. Irene Ryan may have passed quietly, but her impact has never truly vanished. In the months before her death, she made a decision that would outlast the applause. She established the Irene Ryan Foundation, endowing it with nearly $1 million, almost her entire estate. Not for a statue, not for a museum, but for students, for dreamers, for the next voice trembling on a stage, unsure if they belong. Each year, thousands of college students across the United States compete in the Irene Ryan Acting Scholarships, awarded through the Kennedy Center's American College Theater Festival. It is one of the most prestigious honors a young stage actor can receive, and all of it, every cent, every dream, flows from the woman who once played Granny. To this day, young performers invoke her name not as a sitcom relic, but as a benefactor, a patron saint of performance. Irene Ryan is their guardian, unknowable but intimate. They may never have watched the Beverly Hillbillies, never seen Pippin, never heard her vaudeville act. But her spirit lingers in their monologues, their auditions, their breathless hope before a curtain rises. And yet, beyond the scholarships, beyond the foundation, there's another legacy, quieter, more spectral. The cottage. Though its exact status has long been debated, some say demolished, others claim it still stands, veiled by foliage, the idea of it has taken on a ghostly permanence. For locals around Clark Lake, the house is legend. It's spoken of in hushed tones, with reverence and a tinge of sorrow. A structure lost to time, perhaps, but still alive in myth. They say it was already deteriorating before she died, that she hadn't visited in years, that vines grew over the porch like mourning shawls, that you could stand in the doorway, peer into the gloom, and feel her, laughing, crying, remembering. The truth hardly matters anymore. The cottage, real or imagined, became a symbol of the lonely spaces we leave behind. Because the most remarkable thing about Irene Ryan's legacy is that it isn't preserved in glass cases or golden plaques. It's found in the ephemeral, in the breath of a young actor, in the echo of a line said just right, in the tattered dreams of a house no longer standing. That's how she lived. That's how she left. The reflection. Time is cruel to laughter. It echoes, then it fades. And those who make us laugh the hardest are often the ones we forget to look behind. Behind the grin, behind the applause, behind the costume. Irene Ryan understood that. She carried it in her bones. In life, she gave the world a grandmother it didn't know it needed. In death, she gave it 1,000 voices waiting to be heard. The abandoned estate at Clark Lake, whether it still stands or crumbled into memory, is less a location than a metaphor. For a woman who had everything and nothing. For a star who rose, who burned, who vanished into silence. Its empty windows stare back at the world, asking, "Do you remember me now?" Somewhere, in the trembling breath of a college student about to perform, she is there. Somewhere, in a quiet room with peeling wallpaper and dusty floorboards, her laughter still flits between the walls. And in that space between applause and silence, between fame and forgetting, she remains. Not just as Granny, not just as a star, but as Irene. Always Irene. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.